Next budget up is facilities, which will be page 8, Department 159. Fire Paul.
Good evening.
Speak into that mic.
Okay, Paul Jaffoon, Facilities Manager, for those of you who don't know. This fiscal 18 proposed budget is actually less than a 1% increase from last year. Biggest changes you'll see are that there are potentially 2 custodians retiring who would be replaced with new custodians making substantially less than the outgoing custodians. Other than that, the expenses are pretty much the same from last year, and that's it.
Does any of the board members have any questions of Paul? Vaughn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just had a question. You just said it. You have new custodians coming in for less money than the old custodians. I just wondered how you did that, I guess.
So, the new custodians have been here, I'm sorry, the custodians potentially retiring have worked here many years, so they've gone up on the grid, stepped.
So you just have enough of them retiring, I guess, at the same time. It's just the way it worked out, right?
Yes.
Okay. I was just curious.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Smith?
Yeah, I want to ask about the part-time wages. That's a new position. It wasn't in fiscal 16. Is that for an assistant for you, or what do they do?
That's a half-time, if you will, a little bit less than half-time custodian who floats around to different buildings.
Thank you.
Christine?
Hi, Paul. You said that there are 2 custodians potentially retiring, or is it guaranteed that they're going to retire this year?
No. Two gentlemen have expressed interest in retiring, but have not given me a definitive answer when, if and when they actually will.
So if they don't retire, is this custodian line item for salaries sufficient to cover them?
Wouldn't the buyout go away?
Yes.
And that would then cover the remaining salary difference?
It would be very close, yes.
Very close, or like very close on the positive, or do you think you'll need a little bit more?
I guess by the looks of it, may need a little bit more, but
Oh, boy.
more than
Mr. Hartman,
more than
want to help him out? Want to help him out? The buyout's
I mean,
more
I just-
different.
We're pretty confident that at least one of the 2 will retire, and if at least one goes, he'll be okay. The worst-case scenario is that, we have them in there and they do retire and there's no buyback money, because that puts us before town meeting like we were last year.
Right.
For 3 positions at nearly, well, actually at over $100,000 in buyouts. So, it could, like Paul said, it'd be close, but I think we're pretty confident that at least one's going to go. He made noises last year, and we're talking about a period of time that literally is 17 months away.
Okay, thank you.
You all set? Dave?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, Paul, thank you. I noticed the electricity and gas seems to have gone up substantially. I don't know what could be causing that. Maybe you could shed some light on what's driving our utility costs from 26 to 36,000 on electric, 16 to 23 on gas. Well, what drives that? Is it usage, or is it the rates have gone up?
Rates mostly. That was from 16 to 17, really, with the big increases. From 17 to budgeted in 18, very minimal. No increase on the gas line, minimal on the electricity line.
Good. Is there anybody else with questions? Dr. Camacho.
Excuse me, are these, sir, are these union positions?
All of the full-time custodians are my position, and the part-time custodian are not.
So do they have to give, according to their contract, a certain amount of time in which they decide, make a decision as to whether they are leaving or not?
I don't believe so.
They can just up
No.
and decide to leave?
Yes.
And what's included in a buyout?
Their, whatever sick time they have on the books and/or all eligible vacation time.
Do they accrue personal time also?
They do.
But they're not allowed to roll their personal time over. It's a use it or lose it.
So it's sick and vacation?
It's mostly sick.
So they have a contract with the town because they're in a union,
Correct?
but the contract is almost as if they're an at-will employee because they don't have to give any set notice of when they are going to retire or...
None of our contracts do. We've had employees come in on a Wednesday and tell us Friday's going to be their last day. In fact, that's a fairly common occurrence at Public Works. That's just the way it works. Most of our professional employees give us 30, 60-day notice, but the bulk of our rank and file people give us 2 weeks. They say, hey, at the end of the next pay period, I'm out of here.
But it's never been negotiated that there has to be a certain
No.
number of days
No.
so that there can be adequate financial planning?
It has not been negotiated in any of the contracts.
I see. All right, thank you.
Mr. Smith.
This would be more for the manager. Is the sick pay at 100%? They get 100% of for their sick time?
No, in this particular unit, and I will say that if you've seen the memorandums of agreement, we've actually changed the language in the units that we have settled with, and we are seeking to cap this benefit with all of our unions. But with this particular union, I believe the way it works is that you get $50 per day for anything over 100 days. And Stoughton does not have, and never has had, a cap on the amount of sick time you can earn. So if you've been here 30 years, you could easily have 350 days.
John.
Yeah, I was a bit confused by the question as far as if these people didn't retire. Your budget from last year was 245, you're going for, and I'm rounding off, and you're going for 234. The buyout is 21,000. If they don't go out, you get 21,000 for the buyout. Can't you roll that into the salary? Which would give you 255, which would account for $10,000 more than what you had last year. Can't that be used for salary? Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, if they don't retire, you're not going to hire new people, so...
Right, so...
I was a little confused
So
by
we
that.
won't have, that's why I say it'd be very close. We would still
Well, I
have,
think you're 10,000 over from last year, and if, you know, I mean, I don't know how many people, it doesn't matter. you know, with a 2.5% raise, you're not going to go up, you know, I mean, it's not going to be a major difference if they don't retire. There's money there that's going to cover the salary.
Right.
You'd be $10,000 higher than last year anyway.
Right.
All right. I thought maybe I missed something.
No, that was the reasoning we used in coming with the budget this way. We think we'll be okay. And like I say, we're fairly confident that at least one of these two individuals will retire.
All right, thank you.
Anybody in the audience? Oh, wait a minute. Ben, go ahead.
Thank you. For the building supplies line item, the projected is 50,000, and the actual spent in FY16 was, what was it, about $6,000? I recognize you can't anticipate all the repairs that you're going to make, but why is there such like a gigantic window between those two, the forecast and the actual amount?
Yeah.
That is technically a contingency line item,
Okay.
so that we don't have to come back to the Finance Committee and raid your reserve. In any given year, given the age of our buildings, we don't know what it's going to cost. And typically, in fact, you know, that was a line item we created. That line item was not even there. So given the age of the buildings, the number of buildings we have, and the fact that Paul has responsibility for all the buildings, including, for example, the 14 pump stations that DPW has, we felt 50,000 was an appropriate number, but it is a contingency.
Okay.
We can't give you a list like Trish did that said we're going to do this, but the 50K is there in case we need it.
I own a home built in the 1900s, so I understand the challenges. Thanks for keeping everything up and running, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Can I ask a follow-up to that?
Go ahead.
Follow-up to that, do you know the number so far this year for fiscal 17, what you guys have used in that line item? Just to sort of get a sense of where it's at.
Well, between the $25,000 line item, building repair services, and building repair supplies, right now, a little bit more than halfway through the year, we're about $40,000 spent to date, out of that 75.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Laurie? Yeah, oh, you're all set? Okay. Ms. Walsh?
So some of that 16 money was, whenever the 16 budget, I didn't prepare the 16 budget, so I can't really speak to how
We'll blame
some of
Mike.
those numbers were. But I know that this year we'll use mostly all of that number.
Okay, Cynthia?
Cynthia Walsh, 1096 Park Street. First, it depends on how well-traveled you are, but our buildings are unbelievably clean. You go to the senior center, there's a lot of events, and the custodian has to go in and set up for each event. The same thing happens at the library, and I'm sure other buildings too. It isn't just go in at the end of the day and mop up a few spills. These folks are doing some heavy lifting as well as everything else. And the condition of the buildings, the interiors of the buildings are immaculate. And outsiders have commented. Folks come from Sharon and Canton to use our senior center because we use state funds, so they're as welcome as anybody else. And they've commented on how neat and clean the facility is, even though their facilities are younger, are newer. And when the idea of a facilities manager first came up, I wasn't exactly on the bandwagon. But what we were doing without one was lurching from disaster to disaster. If a roof leaked or a pipe broke, it was all hands on deck. But all the little things kept going to the bottom of the pile. Now, obviously, Paul's working closely on the library renovation/addition, and the work that's been done on this building and that's going to be done. But it's the little things. If you go from building to building, as I do, he standardized the paper dispensers.
So some of them used to ring, and some of them used to pull, and some of them were this, and, you know, there's a cost savings in that. Some companies will even give you the dispensers if they get the contract for the paper. So whatever building you go in, the paper dispensers, the towel dispensers, the soap dispensers are the same. Shades, window shades. I mean, this building was renovated over 25 years ago, and the sun's been blaring in people's eyes for decades. And shades, it's a simple thing. But it wasn't something that the town manager, who was kind of in charge in those days, I mean, it just wasn't an important thing. So on top of the big things, where we really do need an expert, we also have the detail work. And someone has to do the detail work, just like the clerk in the Veterans Office. But Paul gets to do it all.
Thank you.
Just one thing, Scott, if I can. Well, I want to commend you for putting something in there, because that's the reason we're in the position we're in all our buildings, because they never put anything in for maintenance. That's what was cut out to just keep the budget going. So I, for one, commend you for asking for it, and hopefully people are in tune enough to know that we have to start this, otherwise we'll be in the same position year after year after year. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Okay, you're all set.
Thank you.